Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Anthropology 1140, Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. It is the 13th of November. It's Wednesday of week 13. Let's take a look at the syllabus. There we are. That's the wrong one. There it is. Here we are down here in week 13. We finished our units, our double unit on environmental anthropology and food. And we're going to end the semester with another kind of double unit on economics, working, sharing, and buying. This is really focused on kind of the concept of economic anthropology. You can't see my screens ever. Why? But primarily focused on like traditional economies, or at least the interface between traditional economies and kind of global economies. At least that's how we'll kind of start. And then next week, we'll look at globalization more fully, both economic globalization, how our iPhone comes from pieces and parts from all over the world, as well as cultural globalization, looking at how we watch TV shows from different places, or we listen to music from different places, and how that has changed cultures both locally as well as globally. Then we got a bonus lecture. We're a day behind, so that we'll probably get caught up on that last day. And then wrap up review and test number 3 coming up real quick, right? So only 2 more units, including this one, until we get to the end. Remember, we only have 10 discussion boards, 10 quizzes, and 10 homeworks. And this week, we're going to do number 9, 9, and 9, homework 9, discussion board 9, and quiz number 9. And remember, if you haven't turned things in, you have until the 2nd of December to turn them in, and then all the links will self-destruct and you won't be able to. But it's 2 full weeks or a week and a half after your last thing is due. So you have plenty of time over Thanksgiving break to get caught up if you happen to fall behind, right? Sorry, mom, dad, I can't watch football. I need to turn things in for Dr. Stanley, right? But hopefully you do get those points, get a good grade in this class. Everyone looks like you're doing pretty well, though. But I will have Jose send out a reminder as we get closer to Thanksgiving about the things that you're missing, so you can make sure to turn them in on time. So we're talking about economic anthropology this week, and we'll be thinking about big questions like what is a gift economy and why is it important to study in anthropology? Contrast a gift economy with commodity capitalism. This actually kind of flows into our question number 3, talking about specific kinds of gift economies, including the potlatch ceremony and the kula ring. These are economic ceremonies that seem to be irrational from our modern standpoint. What are the purposes of these sociocultural acts? And then finally, we'll talk about money, 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 money. Sadly, it won't tell you how to get a lot of it, but we'll talk about what money is and the different kinds of money that operate in society. We'll talk about the differences between general purpose money as well as limited purpose money. So think about what the difference are and how are your flex dollars that you use the Cub an example of limited purpose money. So some big topics. And then we'll talk about gift economies. Probably we'll start on that today, or we'll get to it on Friday. This week we discussed a gift economy to describe your favorite gift you've ever received. Why is it so special to you, and who gave it to you? Why was this item more meaningful as a gift than if you had bought it at a store? And how did you reciprocate this gift at a later time? So we'll be thinking about the process of gift giving today. And then finally, we'll also be talking about production and how we get our stuff. And one of the ways that we can do this is to do this ourselves through what we call self-sufficiency. So what you want to do is, for your homework this week, homework number 9, click on this link, Harvest Moon by Hand. That sounds like a hippie kind of website, and it is. So click here, and these are 175 different homesteading self-sufficiency skills, everything from learning how to cook a whole chicken to learning CPR, make your own laundry detergent, learn how to heat your home with wood or other sustainable sources, make butter, whatever, right? Learn about all the different kinds of things that you could do for self-sufficiency. It's mostly just to inspire you. You might have thought, I've never thought of how to make my own butter. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, right? So which of these self-sufficiency skills of this list do you have? Is it 1 or 2? Do you know how to weave your own cloth, or do you know how to fix your car? Or are there a whole bunch of them, right? I can do like 50 of these things. How did you learn or gain these experiences? From my family, from my dad? I watched a YouTube video, something like that. Which of these skills are you interested in learning more about that you don't currently have, and why? This weekend, your task is to research at least one skill you'd like to know more about. Read, watch videos, talk to real life people. What does it take for you to become proficient in this task? What are some challenges you would face? And why is maintaining self-sufficiency important for the future, right? So think about those topics this week for your homework. Okay, any questions before we start? Cool. Show me PowerPoint. All right. So the last 2 weeks of the semester, or at least the last 2 weeks of lecture, we're going to be focused on economic and economic anthropology. And we start off most weeks or most lectures with the same kind of thought or the same kind of question. This idea that anthropology, we touch on a lot of these fields or a lot of these topics that we see in other disciplines here at the university. Who do you think is talking about economics besides us? We're talking about it, but who else is here? What other class might you be in? Yeah, business. There's classes called like macroeconomics or microeconomics over in the business building. What do those classes teach? What is that all about? Does anyone take an economics class? I'm an economics major. My mom would have been so thrilled. What do they study in economics class? Do you know? Money? Patterns. Yeah, right. There's some patterns. Patterns of what? The economy. And it's based on concepts of money, but also like if I'm pretending to be an economist, yes, it's all about value, yeah, value and supply and demand, right? And the maximizing consumer, right? There's these kind of ideas that go with our understanding of economics, right? That there is this idealized economic citizen out there, part of the modern nation state, who participates in capitalism, right? And this is not based on ethnography or kind of doing interviews or surveys with people. It's like based on like an idealized in your mind scenario, right? Just like how if you were doing chemistry or physics, you might do theoretical physics instead of like actual physics. So we have this kind of maximizing individual who wants to get as much for a bang for their buck, right? I only have $10. I want to get the thing that most satisfies me for those $10. And they talk a lot about satisfaction, right? If I'm buying $10 worth of food, what are some categories I might, from an economics perspective, how might I decide to spend my money from like a rational economics position? Yeah, frugally, right? And most of you are probably in this situation as poor college students, right? I have $10. I want to eat. I need to fill my belly. I'm going to go to, where are you going to spend your money in town? I only have $10. What's a good place to go to eat for $10? Walmart, right? Because I can make it cheaper than going out to a restaurant. Or maybe I'm tired. I don't have time to cook. Where should I go? What kind of restaurant might I go to? I'm going to McDonald's. It's not as cheap as it used to be. Or Taco Bell, something like that. Burger King. I'm going to get fast food, right? It's most calories for my buck. That's a very like maximizing individual kind of way. I have $10. How many calories can I get? One of these like streamers that I listen to used to be a financial planner, and he's always like a Taco Bell, like the best choice is the beefy chicken burrito because it's $2 for 400 calories. That's a ratio of $1 for 200 calories, which is like a very economics kind of way of thinking about it. Do people think about that relationship in other possible ways? Am I always buying the most calories for my dollar when I go out to eat? No. Why? What are some other ways I might consider spending my money or other considerations I might have versus raw calories per dollar, which is the maximizing efficient way to eat? Why don't I eat just the Soylent protein bars that have no flavor and give me like 10,000 calories for a cheap price? Preference. I don't want to eat the same thing every day. Yeah, quality of food, right? Like I want to eat tacos and I might go to Aurelia's instead of Taco Bell. because I like the choice of selection there, or the meat is better, or they actually like have they cook their own beans instead of get it from a can or something, right? So there are these other selections as well. You might also have some kind of social uh, idea involved as well, or social preference, right? You might try to send a message. If you're going to go on a first date with someone, why might you not just emphasize the dollar per calorie ratio and taking someone out to dinner? I'm a very frugal person. Yeah, you don't want to seem cheap, right? You're trying to send a message. Why might I take someone to Roosevelt's instead of Taco Bell on a first date? Even though it's right, we can get that same hamburger at McDonald's for half the price as we can at Roosevelt's. But why? Shows effort, you're into like the ambiance. It shows like you're a certain kind of person or a certain kind of class of people, right? And so, like, kind of, we talked about a couple of weeks ago with our advertising and marketing unit that oftentimes there's these cultural considerations that come into how we spend our money. And this is kind of where anthropology enters the chat, right? Like, we, while economics is all about this kind of like hypothetical maximizing individual who's spending their money rationally, right? Why buy this car when I can buy this car for a lower price and I still can go to work, you know? It's just drives just the same. But anthropologists know that people are not always following that kind of rational model. And economics people will often be like, well, people should be more rational, right? Why aren't they doing these things? When in reality, it's like your model's a little broken, right? Like your model isn't taking into consideration what's actually going on, but instead of changing your model, you're trying to change people's behavior to make them more rational. So we in anthropology, we're going to do the opposite, right? We're going to be really interested in a lot of these same issues as they are in economics, right? Like buying and selling and the circulation of goods and money in society. But we'll think about it from a social angle, right? We'll think about how this actually plays out in society with actual people, not just kind of this idealized person. And we'll also do the thing where we look at different cultures, right? We'll be looking at economics in different societies around the world and spoiler alert, they're going to think about money differently, right? We have this tendency, especially in the economics business department, to think that like post 1990, 1991, at the end of the Cold War, that capitalism won and that everyone all over the world is now a maximizing capitalist and we all think and do business the same way. This is kind of like the promise of the 90s, right? The flat world in which business will move uninhibited throughout the world into all these different new markets, and everyone will be doing capitalism the same kind of way. And what we've learned in the last 30 years is that it's really different, right? Like even if you're still doing capitalism, right? Lost. Entrepreneurs in Malaysia are going to be really different in how they conduct business than people owning businesses in Nigeria or something like that, even though they're all participating within the same global capitalism. The cultural aspects are important as well. So that's my rambly preamble for a position for economic anthropology, and it's one of my interest areas. Usually, when you get your PhD, you have like 2 or 3 interest areas, and mine are pretty squarely in the triangle between environmental anthropology, which we talked about last 2 weeks, agriculture, which we talked about last week, and economic anthropology. We'll talk about this week, right? So I'm looking at how Belizean chocolate, agriculture, has gone from a religious sacred crop, religion, to a global commodity, right? So this kind of 2 chapters that we'll talk about next. So this is squarely within my research interest. That's why we're learning about it. So yeah, we're going to be talking about how people make, share, and buy things and services throughout the world. But like we said, it's going to be real different from what we do in business. In business, there's a lot of emphasis on the prediction of the models, the predictive power, right? Because if I'm a business owner, I want to know if I raise the price of, I sell pens, right? If I raise the price of my pen from 50 cents to 65 cents, how much more money can I make, right? I have more profits per pen, but maybe number of pens I sell goes down, right? Because now they're more expensive. and somebody's just turned off by the price point of a 65-cent pen. And so as a business owner, I use these kind of models to model these economic trends. And this can be at like the individual business level. I own a pen shop and now I want to figure out how much money I'm going to make. Or it can be on like the national, global, macro level, right? Like GDP trends and things like that. I want to look at the cacao industry. You know, as part of what I did for my research, I got hired at the cacao co-op, and the government got really interested in what I was doing. The government believes, and they're like, "Hey, come do a PowerPoint for the Ministry of Agriculture. We want to learn about like what's going on in the cacao industry in the entire country, and we want to predict what it's going to be doing in 5 years. Is it going to be going up? Is it going to be going down? Is it flat? Right? What are the threats on the horizon, and how can we make more money? Right?" So while business is really interested in that, in anthropology, we're not so much, right? We're not interested in predicting what's going to happen, but we're more interested in the description of what's happening and then the why, right? Like, why do people in certain cultures, why do they use money a certain way? Or why are these gifting relationships that we're going to talk about, why do they persist in a modern global capitalism, right? So we'll be talking about lots of things like all people around the world. One of those cultural universals is that people need to get stuff, right? Before 10,000 years or so ago, everybody was a hunter and gatherer. We talked about that in our agricultural unit. And you got stuff from the local environment just by going out and getting it, right? I need some food. I'm going to go hunt today, or I'm going to go dig up some roots. I'm cold. I need some clothes. I'm going to kill an animal and take its process its hide and make it into clothes, right? But beginning with the rise of civilization about 5,000 years ago, if you're interested, take my organs class. Cool. People started having different kinds of jobs. I am a farmer. I am a pottery maker. I am a scribe. I am a judge. I am a tax collector, right? Kind of all those jobs that were present in ancient civilization. And if you didn't grow food yourself, how did you get food? How do we get food today? It's the same. You buy it, right? You have to like do something that makes you money, either as like wages. I work for somebody else in their field. I'm a laborer and I get paid wages at the end of the day. Or I make something and sell it. I'm a potter. I make a pot, I take it to the market, and I sell it for money. And then I take that money as a medium of exchange and I buy something else that I want. And that's generally how things work. You could also trade it directly. What might be a problem with just trading things directly? I have a pot. I need some food. What's the problem with just trading directly to farmer? I'm the potter every day. I need to eat every day. Yeah, right. Like farmer only needs so many pots. The first day he's probably excited that I brought him a pot, but by like day 30 and a month into this, he's like, I don't need any more pots. I'm good. So I sell it to somebody else and I get some kind of general kind of money. So we'll talk about what is money and what does money mean. We spend a lot of our lives like chasing money in this society, but we often don't like think about like what is money, man? It's like one of those shower thoughts, right? What does money mean? What does it mean to different people? And is it the same? Are there different kinds of money? Well, there are. And why are there different kinds of money? Why can multiple kinds of money be circulating within the same society? That's kind of weird. Why wouldn't there just be one? Is everything for sale? Can money be used for everything? Or are there certain things that are even off limits to money? Right? They say money buys anything. But is that true? What are gifts? And why are we talking about presents in anthropology, right? Especially in economic anthropology. What is the relationship here between giving someone a present and economics? Does this even belong in this lecture? Why is gift exchange such an important part of a lot of societies, more so even than buying and selling things? And we'll also talk about different capitalisms around the world. How are different parts of the world, even though they participate in like the market economy, and often are buying things and selling things to far off distant markets, right? Like I sell my chocolate from a Belizean cacao farm in the middle of the rainforest. It gets sent to a district capital. It gets packaged onto a truck and a trailer. That trailer gets loaded onto a ship. The ship goes all the way over to Italy, gets processed into chocolate bars, and they put those things back on a ship, and it goes all the way back across the ocean to the U.S. to get sold, right? And everyone in that process is participating in capitalism, whether you're selling those cacao beans or you're processing chocolate bars or you're working at Whole Foods selling the expensive $9 chocolate bar. But that can have really different meanings for the why and the how about how you're participating in these processes. Yeah, so basically looking at all the ways that culture and society kind of interface with economic stuff. Okay, how much time? Good, we're doing good. So when I asked earlier, about like what is economics and what do we study in economics? Somebody, I think it was Safira, said value, right? And this is a really important concept, and it's kind of the starting concept for economic anthropology. Oftentimes in economics as well as in economic anthropology, and this is a really old kind of discussion going back to Adam Smith and Marx, these kind of foundational figures in political economy, is what is something worth, right? And oftentimes in our society, there's this idea of price, right? I go to Walmart. How do I know how much something is? Got a little sticker on it, right? It says $9.99 or $15.99 or whatever. Always $9.99. And that tells me how much I have to pay to be able to take it home without the cops coming chasing after me, right? But is that the same as what it's worth? Have you ever bought something you'd be like, that's not worth what I paid for it? Like what? What's an example? Or conversely, have you ever bought something like, man, that was good value for money. I really getting my money's worth out of that. Is there ever a disconnect between value and price? What's an example? Yeah. You mean in the positive way or the negative way? Both, yeah. Yeah, you've spent 70 or $80 on a game and you bounce off it, and after a couple hours, you're like, I don't really like this. Versus other games that you might have paid just a little bit of money and you look at your hour count and you're like, oh God, like 10,000 hours of my life has been spent on this like $15 or $10 game, right? I've gotten a lot of value for my money. And I had a friend in grad school who bought an old car, right? It was like an 86 Volvo wagon. And he had that thing for over 1,000,000 miles, right? For like $2,000. He really got his money, his value for his price on that car, right? And then there are other things, right? Like if you buy something on Amazon and you get it, and you're like, this is a cheap piece of junk, right? Or something. It's junk quality. There is a disconnect between the price and the value. And it's easy for us to see the price, right? It's often listed. If you're either in the store, it's on a little sticker, or if it's on Amazon, it just tells you, right? Click on the button, how much it will cost you. But how do we determine the value of something? How do you know if you're getting a good value? Yeah. With other prices, but what about the other aspects? Like, how do you know if this car is a good value or if this video game is a good value? Yeah, what other people say, right? Are other people enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? Or like, is your personal value? Um, what other ways do we know about its value, right? So my personal use of it, am I enjoying it or not? Am I getting a good use out of it? The other way is how much I could resell it for, right? Like if I'm interested, I love sneakers, right? I have 1,000 pairs of sneakers. I really don't wear the same ones every day. But if I did, if I was a sneakerhead, right? I had lots of sneakers. I could have those sneakers, they could be valuable to me for their use value, right? I can go strolling around in my cool sneakers. Or they could have exchange value, right? They could be valuable because I'm planning after, I bought these limited edition shoes. I'm not even going to walk around in them. I'm not even going to use their use value at all. I'm just holding on to them in my secret closet until 5 years from now. I'm going to sell them on eBay and I'm going to make some money. Right? So oftentimes in our society, the use value and the exchange value become disconnected. And it can really depend on your position in society, right? And what culture you're in, how valuable something is, right? Because in certain societies, um, in a Maya community where I did work, having a good machete is really valuable, right? Because you need it to do all your tasks, to do farming, to build your house. But here, right, like machete is going to be not so useful. If you're walking through the desert, a bottle of water might be super valuable to you because you're going to die of thirst. While if you are here on campus where there's water fountains everywhere, it might not have the same value. Other times, there might be a complete disconnect between value and price. What is this? What is that? Declaration of Independence. How much is this? What's the price on this? Priceless. Why is it priceless? Yeah, it's a historic document, right? It somehow exists outside of value. Who's this guy? Is this movie too old for you? Watch National Treasure, right? I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence, right? Uh, and then there's this really great scene in the beginning where he goes into the gift shop and buys a copy of the Declaration of Independence, and then through some little, a switchery, switches out the real one for the one from the gift shop. Why is Nicolas Cage able to purchase a document which looks exactly like the one that he's going to steal for the gift in the gift shop for 1999, but cannot just purchase the actual Declaration of Independence? Why so much switchery? Yeah, right. It has this sentiment. It's like the animating document of our country. It's priceless, right? While the other one is just this cheap reproduction. It's very similar to the discussion we had of the Mona Lisa earlier in our kind of art object day. So the value can have implications on both its use, its exchange, as well as its like historical value, right? Or its cultural significance. So I'm going to show you just a quick video about kind of some of the issues of value that anthropologists and economists have wrestled with, and how we might reconcile these different conceptions of value when we talk about different objects. And I think that's a great kind of ending on the video when we talk about this paradox of value, is that it does come from us, not just on like a personal level, like, oh, I create my own reality on my mind, but us as in like us communally, socially, that we in different societies are going to create what is valuable in different societies, right? How you value your time and your money. We like to think, oh, I'm so individual, right? I decide for myself. But the choices that we have, right? I love to play video games. Well, that's constrained by my society. If I live in a hunter-gatherer society, I don't like have the option to play video games, right? Or if I'm farming full time, or I don't have electricity, right? These kind of technological choices, but also kind of like what we value, right? To do with our time, right? If our culture says that it's really important for us to be able to, be handy and fix things, we might be, more likely to work on cars than if, our society, we have these phones now that you really can't tinker with or mess with because they're all sealed. And so we have a more disposable society, right? So it's less value or something like that, right? This idea of social constraints for our choices, or at least social kind of preferences. This is what we call cultural economics. That rather than kind of this unified human understanding of economics, what an economy person or economist would call homo economicus, right? The maximizing individual, that people in different societies around the world have different conceptions, as we as anthropologists should try to look at this from the EMIC or the insider perspective, right? To see what local people think are important. And we're going to look at some specific examples next time of the Kula and the potlatch to see how, like it's really hard kind of on an abstract level to be like, yeah, I guess other people in different parts of the world have different economic systems, but I can't like imagine it because we live within our own system. So next time we're going to be looking at a couple different systems in which people are engaged with capitalism and these systems interface with it, but their priorities are really different and how they spend their time and their money, right? Because that's what economics is really about, is how you spend your time and your money, right? You spend your time going to work in order to make money so you can have money to buy things that you like, right? Or that you need. And so that's kind of what we're looking for. One of the other ways that we can think about this, and this is kind of how we'll end today, is this idea that there are connections between what we think of as economics, often gets kind of in the business department, gets siloed off as its own separate part of life, and other parts of society, right? You can kind of think of the chapters in your textbook: kinship, religion, right? Environment, language, all these different kind of chapters that we have, or types of domains in society. Oftentimes there's a connection between that, right? Like there's a connection. We often talk about politics and economics as very different things, but we all kind of think about like there's a lot of connection between them, right? The amount of money that go into getting elected and kind of the way that governments influence economic policies, right? There's also a lot of connection between economics and prestige in different kinds of society. And this is often in societies where having more is problematic, right? And we don't really have this in our society, but in a lot of society, in our society, how much money is enough? When should I stop getting more money? Yeah, that's a good way to live, right? Just get as much as I need. Was that? Depends on who you are. How much does Elon Musk say is enough money? All of it, right? Like there's no winning in capitalism. There's always more, right? Like when you're a hundredaire, you're like, I want to be a thousandaire. When you're a thousandaire, you're like, I could be a millionaire. And when you're a millionaire, you're like, I should probably just try to be a billionaire, right? There's always a next level and a next kind of amount of money to aspire to in our society. There's no winning at capitalism. But in a lot of societies, there's too much. There's almost like a ceiling on how much you should have, especially if you live in a really small interconnected community. And there's a big difference between how much you have and how much your neighbors have. And I saw this when we were living in Belize the first time. One of the neighbors kind of down the street, everybody was living in small, either thatch houses or zinc roof houses, but there was a big house down the street and they had a two-story house and they had a pickup truck, and nobody else in town in our street had a pickup truck. We all had to walk everywhere. They had a corn mill, so they were making money as people were grinding their corn up. So they had this kind of steady income while other people were doing more peasant agricultural stuff. So they had a lot of stuff in their house. And then there was a house fire, and that house burned down under mysterious circumstances. Nobody knew why. And people in the community were kind of like, yeah, that's kind of, they get what's coming to them, right? And we were kind of shocked and horrified, like, oh, it's your neighbor. Why would you be so callous? Like they had a lot more than everyone else. So that's kind of, that makes sense, right? If you have too much, there's going to be some kind of force, whether it's, social pressure or cosmological, that knocks you back down a peg so you're more in line with everyone else. We don't really have that idea in our society. Because we have a really big wealth gap between the rich and poor. What do you think might be a strategy if you're in these societies? How might you deal with problematic wealth? If I don't want to get my house mysteriously burned down because I'm making more money than everyone else, what might I do with that money? What might be a safe way to channel that money into something socially acceptable? Yeah, put it back into the community, right? And we have this kind of in our society. It's not so much now, but like at the beginning of the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, these really rich people like the Carnegies and stuff, and the Rockefellers doing these big kind of donations. Like the Carnegies spent all this money to build libraries all across the country, right? Or you can give a bunch of money to the school. we do here, right? Jack Williamson donated a ton of money from his estate to the university, so we put his name on a building. Why do we do that? What is the connection between giving money to the school and getting your name on a building? Is it just coincidence? Did we just happen to name the education building, the Gay Sue Pinellas building, after she spent $1 million renovating Casa del Sol and giving it to the university? Yeah, right. It's the honor, it's a prestigious thing, right? Like it's prestigious that your name is on the building. And we have this at all different scales at the university. It's how foundation kind of works, right? Like you give a lot of money, you get to put your name on the football stadium. If you give like not quite as much, you get like the education building. If you give a little bit less, you can get your name on a scholarship fund, right? Or even less, you can get one of those bricks out in front of the communications building, right? It's all about kind of taking your money and getting your name on something, right, as a form of prestige. This is what's known as it's a great example of what we call a prestige economy. Places where, and we even have this within our own society, and those are great examples of it, where people trade money in for prestige or political power, right? I'm going to give money to the school, so they put my name on the football stadium or something like that, right? In a lot of societies around the world, this is often a way of dealing with problematic wealth. You basically take money and you transform it into prestige. And what can you do with prestige? Beyond being like, yeah, I'm super cool. Especially in traditional societies, you could get like political power, right? Because I'm a prestigious person. I'm generous oftentimes, right? I'm like giving out food or presents to people, and that makes people like me and make them think that I'm a good leader, right? Because I'm generous with my money. A great example of kind of a prestige system is this religious brotherhood system that we see in the Maya region of Central America, the Cofradia system, or the religious brotherhoods, or the cargos they've been called. And these are kind of socio-religious clubs, I guess we would say, kind of similar to like the Moose Lodge or the Elk Lodge or something like that. But they're tied into these to different churches, and they almost have this like competition where on Easter there'll be these big parades, and the different brotherhoods will. You get 50 or 100 of these guys. They'll play music. They carry these big floats or these shrines through the town, and they go all out. Like you spend lots and lots of your own personal money to build these things and to kind of put on this show, and they're almost competing against each other. There's no like prize or like winner, but like it's a display of prestige for the town, right? In which brotherhood is kind of going above and beyond the other ones, gains prestige during that year. So here's just a quick example. I want to show you. This is from Quetzaltenango, I think. Let's see, or maybe it's Antigua. It's in Guatemala. This is Antigua, actually. Of one of these floats and what they look like, just so you can kind of get an idea. So economists are always like, why? This is like a big waste of money, right? Like you could have been working this day. And we actually see this in like 19th century England, right? Economists being like, why so many holidays, right? The poor, they're lazy. They just want to take the day off. And they waste all their money on these festivals and fiestas, right? You spend all this time and money making this decoration on the ground, and you just destroy it by walking on it. You spend a lot of money. You guys are poor farmers a lot of times. You spent so much money on these big floats that you're only going to use once, right? You're not going to use the same float. Next year, you're going to make a whole new float. You got all these costumes, you got all these instruments. Why? What's the point, right? What is the point? Why are people doing here? Why are people spending just so much of their time and money and effort doing these kind of displays? To honor something, right? But it's also about like, so you have the kind of religious aspect, you're showing devotion, but there's also this social aspect, right? You're presenting it to the community, you're displaying your devotion to the church and your generosity in this very public way. in a way that often is tied up in ideas of not only economics, but also like religion and neighborhood and all these other aspects, politics as well. Okay, so next time we're going to take a specific look at more kind of using the Kofferdia system as our jumping off point. We'll be looking at other forms of economic systems around the world, which are very different from our own. And we'll be trying to understand kind of how they're similar or different within their internal logic compared to our economic system. So see you on Friday. Thanks.